A topless Fergie was photographed vacationing with her American financial advisor.
The Duchess of York has spoken for the first time of how hurt she was not to have been invited to the wedding of Prince William and Kate Middleton.
Of the around 1,900 guests invited, Fergie was not one of them.
How hurtful was it to not be invited? It was so difficult.
Toe-sucking pictures of him with his then-girlfriend Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, were splashed all over the tabloids.
Princess Margaret, and I quote, "You have done more to bring shame on the family than could ever have been imagined."
Or try to explain why she tried to sell access to her former husband, Prince Andrew. Let's get more.
A British tabloid newspaper has released this video of the Duchess of York, apparently plotting to sell access to her ex-husband, Prince Andrew.
You had not seen the tape. Is that true?
£500,000 when you can, to me.
Absolutely, yes. And it was given to me and I got it in the car and then returned it straight away.
Former Duchess of York, Sarah Ferguson, better known as Fergie, has been stripped of a decades-old honour.
In December 2023, something happened at Sandringham that nobody in royal circles expected to see again in their lifetime. Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, walked into the Christmas Day church service alongside the King, the Queen, and the rest of the royal family. Cameras caught it, social media exploded, and for one brief, remarkable moment, it looked like the most improbable redemption story in modern royal history had finally reached its happy ending. But here's the thing about Fergie's story. Every time it looks finished, it isn't. If you want more deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe to Royal Archives. Richard Eden, one of Britain's most connected royal correspondents, has been watching Sarah Ferguson for decades. And according to Eden, what happened to Fergie wasn't bad luck. It wasn't the press. It wasn't the palace pulling strings against her. The pattern, he argues, was always there, hiding in plain sight, long before anyone was paying close enough attention. That pattern starts in 1959. Sarah Margaret Ferguson was born in London on the 15th of October, the daughter of Major Ronald Ferguson, polo manager to the Prince of Wales, which meant from the very beginning, Sarah grew up inside the orbit of the royal family. She knew these people. She played with them as a child. Prince Andrew was 4 months her junior. They practically grew up together. On paper, it looked like the perfect foundation. In reality, the cracks were already forming. When Sarah was 12 years old, her mother packed up and moved to Argentina, leaving to be with her lover, Hector Barrantes. No gradual separation, no easing into it, just gone. When, in a 2023 interview, Sarah said she never truly understood why her mother left, and that it took her a long time to deal with the low self-esteem that followed. That detail matters more than it might seem. Because low self-esteem, in a woman about to marry into the most scrutinized family on earth, it is not a small thing, it's a fault line. By 1985, Diana had reintroduced Sarah and Andrew at Ascot. By 1986, they were married, and for a monarchy that had spent the late 70s feeling stale, disconnected, and frankly irrelevant to a generation raised on punk, the arrival of Diana and Sarah felt like a lifeline. These weren't distant figureheads. They felt real, warm, human. The firm had turned a corner. Or so everyone believed. And by 1992, just 6 years into the marriage, Princess Margaret had privately delivered a verdict on Sarah that would echo for the next 3 decades. The words, leaked and reported widely, were blunt.
Princess Margaret, and I quote, "You have done more to bring shame on the family than could ever have been imagined."
Sarah had done more to bring shame on the family than could ever have been imagined. 6 years. That's all it took. The affair with American businessman John Bryan made global headlines. The photographs were everywhere.
Toe-sucking pictures of him with his then-girlfriend Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, were splashed all over the tabloids.
And just like that, the warm, relatable Duchess who had breathed new life into the monarchy became the woman the palace needed to distance itself from. Fast. What's striking, though, and this is what observers like Richard Eden keep coming back to, is not the scandal itself. It's Fergie's reaction to it.
As long as no one mentions the betrayal and infidelity and global headlines, everything will be just A-OK.
There's a photograph from June 1993. Andrew, Sarah, and their young daughter, Eugenie, at a school sports day, and Andrew looks uncomfortable. That much is obvious. But zoom in on Fergie's face and something else entirely is happening. Not shame, not remorse, a kind of vacancy, as if the crisis simply wasn't registering at the frequency everyone else was receiving it on. Eden's read on that moment, and it's a sharp one, is that Sarah Ferguson had an almost structural inability to fully grasp the gravity of situations she found herself in.
A kind of vacant disconnect from the reality of the situation. Almost as if she thinks by pretending nothing is wrong.
Whether that came from fear, from years of people-pleasing, or from something deeper, the result was always the same. The bad thing hadn't been mentioned, so the bad thing hadn't happened. The divorce came in 1996.
I didn't want a divorce, but had to because of circumstance. I wanted to work. It's not right for a princess of the royal hills to be commercial. So Andrew and I decided to make the divorce official.
And even then, the palace made an extraordinary move, releasing a public statement clarifying that the Duchess's financial affairs were no longer the Crown's concern.
It turned out to be an annus horribilis.
Read that again, as the palace felt the need to tell the entire financial world, in writing, not to assume the Queen would be covering Sarah's debts. By 1994, 2 years before the divorce was even finalized, Sarah reportedly needed bank approval to sign off on even modest checks.
She, meaning Fergie, needed bank approval to pay even modest checks. But even then, according to a member of her staff, she always believed there would be a deal around the corner.
And yet, according to people close to her at the time, she still believed. There was always a deal coming, always a corner about to be turned, always a figure that would solve everything. That belief, stubborn, almost delusional, and yet somehow impossible not to admire, became the engine of everything that followed. She wrote children's books. She sold hair straighteners on American shopping channels. She produced a film. She launched a media company called Heartmore. She became a Weight Watchers spokesperson. She wrote a tell-all memoir that caused a serious rift with Diana over shared personal details she'd chosen to publish. None of it worked. Not really, not for long. Heartmore collapsed in 2009, just 3 years after it launched, carrying more than $600,000 in debt. The New York Post started digging. What they found didn't help. Her American charity had released just $14,000 in grants in a year, where it had raised more than $58,000. A spokesman pushed back. The numbers were disputed, but the damage was done. At her 50th birthday party, held weeks after Heartmore's collapse, scaled back significantly from the 300-guest event originally planned, and photographs caught something in Fergie's expression that's hard to explain away. She didn't look defeated exactly, sadness, but she didn't look like someone who'd gotten the birthday she wanted either. Richard Eden's framing for all of this is the Del Boy Duchess.
For our American viewers, Del Boy was a character in the long-running British sitcom Only Fools and Horses.
A reference to the beloved British sitcom character who launches scheme after scheme.
No looking back, never feeling sorry for himself, never giving up hope that the next...
Watches each one collapse spectacularly, and by the next episode is already charging headfirst into the next one. No self-pity, no reflection, just forward motion, always forward motion, fueled entirely by the unshakable belief that the big score was still out there somewhere. For a long time, that quality made people root for her, even the ones who knew better. But then came the moment that changed everything. A meeting, a swanky London apartment, an undercover reporter posing as a foreign businessman, and a decision Sarah Ferguson made, one that even she would later describe as the key to the whole of her life, that nobody who heard about it could quite believe. May 2010. The British Sunday tabloid News of the World published a video, and within hours, it was everywhere. In the footage, Sarah Ferguson, clearly having had a few drinks by her own later admission, sits across from a man she believes to be a wealthy foreign investor. The conversation moves quickly.
A British tabloid newspaper has released this video of the Duchess of York, apparently plotting to sell access to her ex-husband, Prince Andrew. The undercover video of the second meeting was taped Tuesday in London.
And before long, she's reportedly agreeing to accept an initial payment of $40,000 with the promise of $500,000 more in exchange for access to Prince Andrew. She was caught on camera shaking hands on it, smiling, saying the words, "I can open any door you want, and I will for you."
£500,000 when you can to me.
The royal world went silent. Then it erupted. Was to be clear, the reporter who ran the sting, Mazhar Mahmood, was later jailed in 2016 for perverting the course of justice in a separate case. The news of the world itself collapsed in scandal just a year after the footage aired. These are not small footnotes, they matter. But here's what royal observers kept pointing back to. Fergie never denied it was her in that video. Not once. When she appeared on Oprah weeks later, she called it, in her own words, gross stupidity.
She said, "I was in the gutter at that moment. I'm aware of the fact that I've been drinking, that I was not in my right place."
She said she was in the gutter at that moment. She acknowledged the drinking. She said it felt like being stripped bare. And then, in that same interview, something shifted. Watch the language carefully, because Eden flagged this too.
There aren't really very many words to describe an act of such gross stupidity. I think this is the key to the whole of my life now.
She moved from taking responsibility to framing herself as the one left exposed, not as the person who made the offer. And as the person who got caught making it, that pivot, subtle as it was, told its own story. Then came 2018, 8 years after the Oprah interview, and Sarah Ferguson gave a new account to Harper's Bazaar, one that bore almost no resemblance to what she'd said before. She claimed she hadn't been selling access at all, that the reporter had wanted to go into business with her, that the video had been cut and edited to look like something it wasn't. Across royal commentary circles, the reaction was the same. If that version of events was true, why hadn't she said so on Oprah? Why wait 8 years? Nobody got a satisfying answer. This is the thread Eden keeps pulling. Not that Fergie is uniquely dishonest, but that she operates with a particular kind of selective memory. The bad thing, once it recedes far enough into the past and stops being what it was, it becomes something softer, something more survivable, something that, with enough distance, can be quietly rewritten. And that quality, useful as it was for getting back up after every fall, also meant accountability never quite landed where it needed to. William and Kate's wedding in April 2011 made it plain. Of roughly 1,900 guests invited, Sarah Ferguson was not among them. No explanation given publicly. None needed. The message was clear enough. She spent the next decade on the outside. Trips to Ascot with Andrew, the occasional public appearance, but no seat at the table. No invitation to the events that mattered. The firm had made its position known without ever needing to say it out loud. And yet, by 2023, after a breast cancer diagnosis, after surgeries, and after what she later described as a year that forced her to look at everything differently, something changed. King Charles extended what many observers read as an olive branch. Sarah appeared at Sandringham on Christmas Day for the first time in over 30 years, walking with the family, photographed, smiling. The internet called it a miracle. Royal commentators called it extraordinary. Even those who had written her off completely had to admit. If anyone had earned a second chance through sheer refusal to quit, it was her. Richard Eden's take on that moment is worth sitting with.
Sarah was now back in the fold, back at the very heart of the firm.
Because he doesn't frame it as a fairy tale, he frames it as a tax receipt. The bill, he argues, for being truly, utterly unembadderable. Fergie never laid down, never stopped believing the next chapter would be better. And eventually, and after 3 decades of waiting, the family let her back in. But Eden also noted something else, something quieter, that the same quality which got her to Sandringham, the forward motion, the refusal to reflect too deeply, the absolute certainty that the next deal would be the one, also left her exposed, because when you're always looking ahead, you don't always look carefully enough at who's standing next to you. or what you owe them, or what they know. Within 2 years of that Christmas photograph, Sarah Ferguson lost her Duchess title. The details reported in the press pointed toward a final breakdown of trust, a pattern of conduct that King Charles, according to sources close to the palace, simply could not continue to overlook. The woman who had survived everything, who had been banished and came back, who had failed publicly and kept going, who had stood in the cold outside Bloomingdale's selling coffee pots months after a global scandal. She lost it all again. Richard Eden's conclusion isn't cruel, but it isn't gentle either. The signs, he says, were never hidden. They were there in 1993 at that school sports day, there in the Harper's Bazaar interview, there in every moment where accountability was offered and quietly declined. Fergie wasn't waving, she was drowning. And the tragedy, if that's what this is that she was often the last person in the room to know it. What do you think? Was Sarah Ferguson a victim of circumstance? Or did she write this ending herself? Drop your take in the comments. And if you're not subscribed to Royal Archives yet, now is the time. Because this story, it is far from over.